Hello. Hello. Sorry for keeping you there. Trying to get the thing organised and it was not working at all. Let's just make sure my settings are correct. That doesn't look big there. So I bought a screen for the mic so that I can improve, obviously, the quality of the sound. So that's hopefully on its way. And that should be it. Hello, baby gorillas, and we're back in business. I think we're going to have an introduction. My baby gorillas saying hello there, afternoon. Sorry for the delay. I'm going to hospital soon, so can you, Mike? Oh dear, we've started already. Who's Mick? John. Thank you. So let's get right into this. So I apologise for the mic. The mic you'll just have to put up one last time, and hopefully after this we will be getting some fantastic results on the mic as well. If you've got to put up with So, I thought I would discuss a wee bit more about this and discuss the bastardisation of democracy that is happening without a doubt in our different society, our different constituencies. And I thought what I'll do is I'll get this up, read this to you. And as you know, I've already stood for the Scottish Libertarian Party. Hi all, hi Marion, how you doing? Is that your tune, Dave? No, I'm going to. I was trying to get. Everybody knows Leonard Cohen. Everybody knows, and that was going to be the tune that we were going to actually play. Everybody knows that the dice is loaded, and I would need to find out how to get the royalties to actually play that as the introduction. It was in a film called Hard Talk, where I think Mr. Christians played a young guy who had a pirate radio station, and I want to get that as the actual theme tune to the Guerilla TV channel. Mike can meme, by the way, John. You're right. Who's Mike? I don't know who Mike is. So I wanted the theme of today is about our democracy. And let me just get back on to find out what's actually happening here and what I've actually said. So independence rejected. Well, I don't know if independence will be being rejected. So the globalists prevent alternative political parties access to media and hustings access in Scotland. Now, I already know this. I was obviously stood for the Brexit Party as an MP, and I wasn't notified of certain hustings that were actually happening, which then gives a disadvantage to the people. A, it looks like you've not bothered turning up, and B, it looks like it gives a monopoly to the other parties, the other 5 parties, who the people at the hustings can only hear their voice. So this is a big thing. This is a bastardisation of democracy, and this is how the political class, the five main parties, start to warp democracy. And we can see it with the fact of like Alex Salmond and George Galloway not being allowed to speak on the leadership debate. Even though Alex Salmond now with the Alba Party has got MPs, they are not allowed to then speak, and councillors are not allowed to speak at the debate, so you don't get other sides of the political spectrum or other sides of the political debate. I don't think Alex Salmond is very much a different side of the political spectrum, but what they try and do is concentrate. It's like having three communist parties and only allowing the three communist parties to speak and calling it a democracy. We need other people with other political ideas to be able to be speaking as an alternative to this. If you've got one person, say it was Nicola Sturgeon, and only Nicola Sturgeon was allowed to speak, then that's almost like a dictatorship. And the fact that they've restricted it to Sawa, Rennie, the Greens, whoever the woman was in the Greens, Nicola Sturgeon and Mr Ross, that means they can contract the political discourse and not allow these individuals to actually have a chance. Now, this actually happened to me when I was standing, as I said, as an MP for the Brexit Party. I was not notified of one of the hustings, and by not being notified, it looked like I just didn't bother going along to it, which that wouldn't have been the case. So I was notified by somebody else. So I just want to read this out. This is emails that I was sent. And I'm not surprised at this. They obviously try and restrict the debate so that other opinions aren't being allowed to be openly and transparently discoursed and being able to have other debates. So this person, I think this person sent me an email. It might be a fake email. It doesn't really matter. I already know for a fact that actually this happens. So it's not. This happens throughout Scotland. Other parties are not notified of like council positions coming up. There's no central sort of ability for a party unless you've got people in the constituency to go and actually speak to people and find out where the actual council seats are coming up. So it gives an unfair advantage to the five existing parties, and thereby we get bad politicians in because of the lack of discourse and input from people with alternative points of view. So this is very bad. This is really, really bad, and it's a blight in our democracy. There's a few things I'm going to show you that are a blight in our democracy. As I'm standing as the dual candidate for Scottish Libertarian Party in Dumbarton constituency in the West region, I haven't been invited to a single hustings just yet. So they are now deliberately trying to contract the debate to the five parties and not allowing alternative voices to be heard. So the person that organises the hustings then stops the actual person being informed who is standing in a region or a constituency. Guys, anybody greeting for the EU is totally a beta male. Correct. The biggest blight is the beta male MPs. So I'm going to crack on with this and I'll read out through that. I wouldn't interact with the chat just now. As I'm standing as the dual candidate for Scottish Libertarian Party in Dumbarton constituency and the West of Scotland region on the regional list, I haven't been invited to a single virtual hustings just yet. So they deliberately do that. They do it in Newsnight as well. So the Newsnight picks who's actually allowed to come into the audience. So it's already a contracted audience with people who all think the same, with MPs who all think the same, and nobody else is allowed to speak if they disagree with the actual globalist narrative. I haven't been invited to a single virtual hustings just yet. There was one that took place 2 days ago that was hosted by Time for Change, a Guerilla Butte, a climate activist group. And it was advertised in the Helensburgh Advertiser that all candidates from the Dumbarton constituency would be there. But as I had not been contacted by the organisers who advertised their event on Eventbrite, I decided to contact the organisers via their listed email address on Sunday the 4th of April 2021 to see if they would get me into their event as a candidate, but the response was to decline my invite because of time constraints. So they'll just make up any excuse. So it's any excuse to politically debar you and debar political parties and stop them being represented. So it's only the existing parties, and they're able to manipulate the debate in an undemocratic manner. I contacted him, and it happened to me as well. So it's not. I don't really even need this, because I know for a fact it happened to me as well for the Brexit Party. That they deliberately do this to actually manipulate the debate. So it's only the 5 useless parties: the Greens, the Village Idiots, basically, the Globalist, the Islamo-Marxist Party, the Gimps. Well, they're all Gimp parties anyway, including the SNP. Wee Nippy and our fascist SNP, and Ross, who's just a corporatist globalist and a Gimp party as well. The liberal, undemocratic Democrats, and who else have we missed out? And the Labour Party, just the Gimp party. I contacted them again, along with some of the other candidates, including Jackie Bailey, MSP, the next day, going into the very day of the event to see if they could overturn their declination, and they did, but just slightly, by allowing me to write a response to their 4 main questions via email, which I happily did. But this goes to show how absolutely dreadful the situation is with trying to get primarily the party I'm part of involved in other hustings. Steph Johnston is due to take part in one on the 15th of April, though, whereby you send them an email and the response is to say that they only focus on mainstream political parties along with sitting MSPs. So they're thereby contracting the democratic debate right there. So then other people who have different views don't get to actually speak. So it's not a democracy, it's almost like an oligopoly where only the 5 useless parties are able to speak and not actually anybody else. So, and I mean, the 5 useless parties are worse than useless. Further to my last email about our hustings event, I would just like to reiterate our reasoning behind inviting only representatives of the 5 largest parties. As a group, our main concern is that we have an ongoing dialogue with whoever wins the election, and that this dialogue may translate into some real political change in terms of ensuring urgent climate action. So what they're doing is deliberately restricting the debate to push a narrative and basically manipulate the MPs. So there might be other people who don't agree with what this activist group is actually doing. So I would suggest that you potentially set up your own hustings. And rather than actually wait for some other hustings, you set up your own hustings and allow other people to come along to that, so that they can do it. So I would set up with the UK Reform Party or even left-wing parties as well, who are prepared to actually have a different discourse and allow them the freedom of speech that they're not getting through the contraction, through the media. As we saw, the leadership debate was just a joke. 5 absolute characters being able to debate each other who pretty much didn't disagree with each other. It's like one political entity, and therefore we made the decision that the purpose of our hustings would be to maximise opportunities for the candidates to talk about the party's policy on climate action and however they will pursue this if elected, which requires a significant amount of time. However, we would like to be fair as possible to all candidates. If you would like to talk about your party's policies on climate crisis, we invite you to submit a response in 4 questions in writing. We will share them with our group. The question will be posed to other candidates. By averting the most catastrophic climate change and migrating the effects of the change already happening requires action rather than words. Plant more trees. So that should have been the main. Why don't we plant more trees? We could actually now try and use salination tanks out of the Atlantic, South Atlantic, and then irrigate the Sahara Desert, for example, where the trees could be planted and that would capture, and the same in Australia. These have already been put forward as viable options, where salination tanks, which would reduce increasing seawaters, and it'd be able to irrigate large parts of desert, which is now could be growing trees and thereby sustaining more life. That's a viable potential option. Just pump them through big oil pipes and big pipeline. So that's one option. So it doesn't always have to be the negative. And I think we're already at 50% renewables in Scotland for our electricity. So we've already got a substantial part of the electricity in renewables. So we can work in cars now, so we can innovate in automotive. And that's what we should be doing, a bit like Musk over in the United States. What action do you consider most important in the short, medium and long term? Plant more trees. For decades, governments has been pursuing the policy encouraging individuals to make small changes in their behaviour to combat environmental degradation. This policy has been impacted on environmental and, well, I don't think it has. And even if Scotland, say for Scotland became, or the UK as a whole, became totally green, they had no car emissions. It was completely renewable energies, which I don't disagree with. I think renewable energies, or certainly minimising other aspects of power supply, but the majority being renewables, I've got absolutely no problem with. But even if we did that, and even if we had no cars, it was all electric cars, and we had done everything with no gas and no pollutants, it's not going to really matter, because the largest pollutants are China and India just now for greenhouse gases. And unless you get them to change, unless you help them innovate and help them to mitigate their exposure to CO2, and also to increase the amount of trees. I think China planted forests of trees in China to increase the mitigation. But you could, as I said, irrigate the Sahara Desert and start putting out like oases and start to actually reforest it, because I believe it was a forest before it became a desert. So that's certainly something that could be done in a positive manner. It's not just these types of things that actually make a difference. It's not just these issues. It's the fact that the main political parties restrict the political debate, don't let anybody have discourse. They're shouting at me being a racist. Now I wasn't even talking about race. I haven't talked about race anyway. Being a racist, to shut down the argument. They shut down the people with alternative views from actually even going to hustings. They shut it down through the media. And that's the way that they contract the debate, and just to actually not allow their stupid ideas, their bad ideas, the bad politicians to actually be challenged. And that's the issue. You do not agree that sorry, let me just go back here. The policy has been had a negligible impact on the environmental bottom line, with scientists warning that we are very little time left to change course. So if you start planting more trees, then that would soak up the CO2. If that's the main issue, soak up the CO2, and you can, as I said, you can start to irrigate big salination tanks off of Africa, pump water through the Sahara Desert, and introduce trees and things like that in the Sahara Desert, which then would in turn soak up more CO2. There's the expanse of the Sahara Desert is absolutely massive, and the amount of trees that could be planted down there would be absolutely enormous. This is not my idea. This has already been muted by other people who are already speaking about this, and that's certainly something that, if that was an international effort and this is such a pressing problem, that's certainly one way of actually alleviating it. Do you agree that we need radical systemic change to avert climate disaster? I don't know if we've got a climate disaster happening, but it doesn't even matter. We can still, if that is, it would then allow us to be able to flexibly change the climate. But all we would have to do is start to irrigate deserts and increase the amount of trees and other foliage that's actually in the deserts. So that could be quite easily done. And that could just be a pool of money that would go to irrigate various communities that are in the equator. And it would also reduce the sea level because the seawater would be pumped through the salination tanks and also into the new forested desert or grass desert, whatever. Do you agree that we need a radical systemic change to avert climate disaster? And if so, what role do you see yourself playing in bringing about the change? Well, we could have innovations in technology as well. So that's one thing that in a capitalist society you can innovate as well. And that it doesn't just have to be one way. 3, people often say that they take hope from the young. This is placed a huge unfair weight and expectation on young people. I don't think it's the young that's the issue. It's going to be governmental, and you're going to have to look at countries that are high polluters, such as China. I'm not saying we can't help China to innovate to actually become greener, but you're going to have to look at the countries that are the largest polluters first, because only by changing them are you going to be able to have an effect on the overall atmosphere. So you're going to have to look at the reduction of CO2 through planting of trees, for example, or technical innovations, or you're going to have to then look at China and India and put pressure or help them to innovate, help them to actually get new greener energy, whatever it's going to take to improve the life, and also improve the lives of people in India and China. So that we can certainly help them. And I think that's where we're going to have to look at who the largest polluters are. Let's have a look. I think it's. I actually think there's something here. Guys, think we are daft. Of course they do. Of course they do. That's exactly what they think. I think we are absolutely barking mad. So largest. I think there's a graph in this CO2. There we are. There it is there. So here we go.
So the past few years has actually been quite challenging trying to grow our coaching business. You know, we got stuck at every turn.
USA was. Britain was as well. (1965). Japan industrialized and became a world power as well. Oh, look at China go. So Britain's actually reducing from 77. Well, no, it's staying about the same. So Britain's actually reducing from 1981. You can actually see Britain reducing its CO2 emissions. Ah, look at Britain. Britain's still under 600. Oh, it's even slipping now behind India. Britain's actually staying under the 600,000 tonnes. And it looks like it's going down. Oh, and there's Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine, for some reason, seems to be falling right back there. Britain's going down. Oh, Britain's going right back down, isn't it? Oh my goodness, look at China. Britain's slipping right down. Obviously, I think there's been climate improvement or environmental improvements in the UK. See Britain slipping right back there on the amount of emissions. I think it's going to go under 500,000. Wow, yeah, look at that. Britain. China is massively the single biggest polluter, then America, then India. And the UK is slipping right under 500,000 there in 2013. Wow. Oh, look at that. China is massively polluting the so unless you talk to China, so much for the communist utopia. That's only up to 2017. Let's go have a look at the last sort of. So here we can see the UK is actually going from about 600,000, so it's nearly halved the emissions. Now that's 4 years ago, but we can see China and the USA, India, Russia. So unless Japan, so unless these countries, when we actually either give technology or sell technology to these countries that are potentially improving in their economic development, and help them with the renewables, improve our own renewables, the quality of engineering, then we can see it's made a massive difference to the UK. I don't know if we've got... UK was a huge polluter, and now it's obviously under 300,000, so let's just skip right along here. So it looks like China in 2020 has reduced its global emissions to decline by 8% in 2020 due to COVID surpassing any previous declines. But we can see here 2020, so this is about as close as we're going to get. 2020, so there's been obviously a reduction due to COVID, but Britain seems to be well. Africa, Mexico, so there's a whole host of other countries that seem to be doing a lot less. And if you compare the UK to somewhere like China, I mean, it's a fraction of China's. I mean, it's an absolute fraction of China's overall exposure. So unless you, or CO2 emissions, unless you actually get these countries and be able to help them innovate in their renewables or their expulsion of CO2 emissions. And only through innovation and entrepreneurship will that actually happen. Are you going to see an overall reduction? But I mean, these are the top three: China, US and India, followed by Russia, Japan and Germany. Would have to be seen to be doing more, followed by South Korea and Iran. So these are the countries that are going to have to look at their own emissions. Britain seems to be going in the right direction, and it seems to be declining just now. So even if Britain got to zero emissions, zero emissions, it's still not going to make any difference, because the rest of the world is polluting in a massively greater extent. So unless these countries actually, and pressure was put on these countries to innovate, then even if Britain got to zero emissions, it's still not going to make the difference. It's going to help innovate, but we should be then selling getting the technology over to these other countries who are obviously not as bothered about the CO2 emissions. I mean, that's quite incredible, an 8% decline in CO2 emissions by 2020. So what are you guys saying? Every single day it must be a mountain of cack. Have to live like a refugee. Imagine the amount of jobs are produced in China and India. So, back to this. So this is another way that they actually restrict it as well. So they restrict it through hustings, people not being able to go to the hustings. They restrict it. Sometimes the post office doesn't even deliver the actual letters for certain candidates. They restrict it by not allowing people to debate on national television unless it's the 5 main parties. So you've got a bunch of idiots that are able to spout out a lot of nonsense unchallenged. And another way they do it, the reason I was late, I was trying to send myself this. Now, this is Westminster voting intentions. So the Conservative Party are sitting at 45%. So they're up one. The Labour Party at 36%. So Sarwar in Scotland's got the Labour Party declining in Scotland. So it looks like it's only going to get like 15%. Nobody's going to vote for the Labour Party. The Labour Party are on a terminal decline in Scotland. I think they're on a sort of vortex to nowhere. And they've just been not competent in anything they've done in Scotland. So there's the illiberal, liberal, undemocratic Democrats, the watermelon Greens at 4%. Then you've got the Reform Party. So what they usually do is they actually cut the poll from here so that you don't know who else to vote, or they'll manipulate it so that, like the Reform Party or UKIP, which is down to, the Reform Party's up to 4%, the UKIP's at 2%, are not actually even on the poll. So you can actually see that other people may be starting to support them, and they're actually going up in the polls. Once the Reform Party or UKIP get to that third place, it's going to be very difficult for them. They'll have to just put the Labour and Conservative Party on the poll. But what they do is they try and restrict the polls so that you can't see that there are other parties that are increasing, a bit like the Scottish Libertarian Party. The Scottish Libertarian Party have not been on any polls in Scotland already, although as far as I'm aware they could be sitting as high as 4%. So that's another way they've actually done it. So, do you agree that do you agree that it's time that older people, particularly those seeking hold political power, showed leadership in offering hope to young people? Well, the only hope that the young people could get, it's not an age thing. It's not like the old people versus the young people. It's there has to be pressure on China, the USA and India as the largest polluters to either start to get renewables, start to use renewables, start to use technology to stop the pollution, to increase their tree planting or whatever it is was going to soak up more of the CO2. And ways of actually reducing it, because it's not going to matter even if the UK gets to zero emissions if they're still polluting at the level that they're polluting at. We're not going to change global warming by themselves, and it's not going to be an old versus young thing. It's going to be, can we get China, India and the USA to reduce their overall emissions? And that's the only way, if global warming is a thing, that's the only way that that's going to change. So the way that this has been phrased is probably not the correct question here. It's not to say that we can't do more to mitigate or reduce completely CO2 emissions in the UK, and be seen as a leader in doing that, and be able to export that to other parts of the world such as China, India and the US. And I think the US is of a level that they could be taking more of a lead in renewables and doing things like that as well. Do you consider climate change, biodiversity loss, plastic pollution? Yeah, well, you can. I believe that there's a way of reheating plastics and turning it back with using water to boil the plastics, and then you can turn it back into like the underlying petrol, and then use the petrol again to make more plastics. So it can be then recyclable, the plastics, rather than just being buried, which seems absolutely ridiculous. We spend all that money taking out the ground just to bury it again. Absolutely bonkers. Human well-being. So do you consider climate change and biodiversity loss? Yeah, so we're all on for rewilding and getting various lost species back into the wilds of Scotland. Plastic pollution, human well-being and economic prosperity to be separate issues that must compete for political attention. So, yeah, I think they're individual issues. I think everything is an individual issue. Human well-being. So, I think by having a less polluting atmosphere, we're going to have a better human well-being. Economic prosperity is done by growth, economic growth. You can have an environmental policies and economic growth. The two are not always in line. And they're mutually exclusive, should I say. And the fact is you can have both. Issues that must compete for attention, or interdependent threats that may be managed holistically. So, or as interdependent threats that may be managed holistically, they would all be seen as individual, and the way that you would address each of these would be on an individual basis. Thank you again for your interest. We are sorry. So what we should do is have a hustings for politicians who want to increase growth, high tech. So we should actually set up a hustings for high tech hustings, and actually get somebody like Sir Tom Hunter along, and actually for him to speak with regards to what he was talking about, creating Scotland as a Singapore type environment, which is he's a great entrepreneur and a great and a really nice individual. So that's what we should be looking to do. Thank you again for your interest, and we are sorry not to have the capacity to invite every candidate to speak at our event. Again, restricting the information. I answered the questions provided as the Scottish Libertarian dual candidate for the Dumbarton constituency and West of Scotland region for today's hustings as follows. Both averting the most catastrophic climate change and mitigating the effects of the change already happening required action rather than words. What actions do you consider most important, short, medium and long term? So this is the response from the Libertarian candidate. The main action required to be taken for all three terms involves letting the free market prosper with less regulation in order to help meet the demands from the consumer, how to tackle bad environmental issues, and with better prices as a result of healthy competition. People can get the products that will help solve the problems at hand. Three other solutions that I feel need to be done the Libertarian way in order to help combat the problem include full decriminalisation of hemp, including cannabis, so that farmers can be allowed to grow it, and plant is particularly great at absorbing excessive CO2 emissions. Very interesting. So councils and business owners can choose to hang the plant in baskets in streets that are notorious for high CO2 pollution. So that would be good, actually having trees in highly CO2 concentrated areas in the UK. Hemp also makes a great plant alternative to trees, so turning hemp turning to hemp will turn help to reduce excessive deforestation. Ceasing subsidies to energy companies of every kind. Now, I believe this is a Green Party issue as well, that they want to stop funding North Sea oil companies as well. The big oil and gas companies. So both the Scottish Libertarian Party and the Green Party are both wanting to stop subsidies to energy companies. Deregulating the energy market so that consumers can choose the energy source that need best, even if it perhaps means going to extremes of inventing their own energy supply to what Nikola Tesla originally invented, albeit at their own and neighbours' risk. Very interesting. We'll need to find out when Nikola Tesla. For decades, governments have been pursuing a policy of encouraging individuals to make small changes in their behaviour to combat environmental degradation. The policy has a negligible impact on the environmental policies, bottom line. With the science warnings that we have time left and to change course, do you agree that the radical systemic change to avert climate disaster, and if so, what role do you see yourself playing and bring about this change about, or bring that change about? If the systemic change involves destroying the way we live our lives in the current time via government intervention, especially with UN Agenda 2030, including the banning people from owning petrol, diesel vehicles, wood stoves, barbecues, it will only lead to more bad outcomes than good outcomes in a totalitarian society. I like this guy. Or certainly an authoritarian society. I myself, as a volunteer litter picker, work pretty damn hard at my own expense to help rid the litter random places in Western Bartonshire, whether it's in the Overton Estate Wood, the Land Crags Fish Woods in Ballock, Carnman Hill between Renton and Candross, or even the in recent times, I often have driven in a low CO2 emission petrol van to get to places in need. But I have to say that it's never ceased to amaze me that many people who claim to care about the issue of litter never tend to help empower themselves to get rid of the problem by action. It is the stigma of being looked down upon or ridiculed for daring to take action yourself to get rid of the litter never has went away at all. But I beg the government to force any random person to get involved in litter picking their own area or less. No, getting only the rapists, murderers, terrorists, thugs, domestic abusers and thieves to do the litter picking for communities only helps reinforce and aforementioned stereotypes that members of the Scottish public generally have about those who pick up litter. I simply do the work I do and help encourage others to hope that they maybe go to their local shops to get themselves some litter bags, hand sanitisers, bin bags, so they can along hopefully their neighbours can do their bit in helping their local environment to thrive. On same subject of climate change, it's on my view that the climate matters change naturally along with the CO2, and there is nothing that we humans can do about the climate naturally changing, no matter how virtuous we try to be about it. More people die from the events of too cold temperatures every single year than heat-related events. See Kasparny. People often say they take hope from the young, blah, blah, blah. Young, and this is a huge and unfair weight of expectations on young people, which is negatively impacting their capacity to make that exceptions. Do you agree that it is time older, and particularly those seeking political power, show leadership in the offering hope to young? It depends on what kind of leadership should be offered. As a young man, I feel that the kind of leadership that should be offered by mainly older politicians to younger generation must involve standing up to protect their basic freedoms and liberties from being taken from them, both foreign as well as our own governments. They should be also involved reminding us why we should be grateful to have freedoms and liberties our grandparents and great-grandparents fought for. If the demand by the generation I grew up with involves begging schools, universities and colleges, big media organisations such as the BBC and turn the government to censor certain forms of speech that they find problematic and have anyone published by any appropriate institution, including the state, that dares utter those sorts of speeches, I'm afraid that I do not have any hope for the collectivised generation of people at all. With that said, not every young person thinks the way as most of the hive does, but they are frightened of expressing their ideas, including certain forms of edgy humour in public, for fear that they get socially ostracised or sacked from their jobs, or even in the extreme cases literally have their education grades lowered or face possibly being suspended or expelled from school, that they feel that they have no choice but to keep their hands down only by examining our own individual behaviour and wondering how we would make a difference ourselves by first taking care of our own problems. Can we actually get anywhere? Do you consider climate change, biodiversity, low plastic population, human well-being and economic prosperity to be the same separate issues that must compete for political attention, or interdependent threads that must be managed holistically? I can only perhaps agree with the former. They are actually separate issues in terms of immediate actions, which I agree with. It's amazed that certain issues, including the continued leak of radiation into the Pacific Ocean from the power plant, is not being actively discussed by so-called pro-environmental activists, groups like yourselves, and the entire mainstream media as such, as press as much. We can only deal with one problem at a time. Thank you for your event. Unfortunately, due to blah 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 blah, the decision will only invite the five largest parties in the constituency, so we're going to stick with the discussion between Labour, the GIMP party, the liberal undemocratic Democrats, the fake nationalist party, the globalist corporatist globalist party, and the watermelon neo-Marxist kidding on the environmentalist Green Party. We would welcome you to contribute any discussions following the hustings, blah 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 blah. So I'm glad to get through that. That was quite good. Hope that but that's quite interesting. So as you can see, as the sun that controls the climate, not humans. Yeah, well, I think it's not going to matter if we reforest or we reduce CO2s. It's not going to be that big a deal. But what we should be doing is innovating and be creating a more capitalist society where more innovations will actually improve it. The left want to hold everybody back. They want equality, so they want to hold everybody back rather than letting people who are exceptional go on and be exceptional. They want to hold everybody back. Put a lid on everything, and so that they can control it like some nebbishy group, which the five parties are, just a nebbishy group. So it's interesting to see that UKIP is now sitting at 2% as well, and then the Reform Party's up to 4%. So I mean, the Reform Party keeps growing. It's going to get into third place. It's only another couple of points. I already said it was going to be in third place. I think that this poll is going to underrepresent what the Reform Party is going to do. The Scottish Libertarian Party has not been asked in any poll as well, so we don't know the numbers that's going to come in for that. That's been artificially suppressed as well. They should be finding out details on everybody who's actually standing. If there's 20 like the Family Party and everybody else, they should be covering that, and all 20 people should be able to discuss the issues, so that we get a plethora of the ideas, not just these 5 useless parties. useless MPs. So let's go into this. So, as I said, so that's UK opinion poll. Labour are absolutely getting crushed under Keir Starmer, 9 points behind. Okay, we're not get any elections soon apart from the ones in May. But it looks like the Conservative Party under Bojo, who's not done a good job, are still going to hang on to power. The Liberals, the Green SNP, oh no, the SNP GEFA, I don't know what that is. SNP are sitting at 9%. UKIP's -1. So the Brexit Reform Party, I don't know. Ireland. I don't know where that is. There we go. We can see the UK Reform Party are going up. There again, see, look, election map, so it just cuts off 3. Brexit Reform Party, it's weighted at 3%. There you go, this is the polls that we get. So the UK Reform Party in Scotland is now sitting at maybe 5%. The Scottish Libertarian Party is sitting at 4%, so it's up 2%. So this is the sort of polls that we're getting. And the Alba Party is actually now sitting at about 6%, which was previously at 3%. All of these parties are going up, and that's the polling that we've got. One party, so this is the Hartley pool, so that's Tim Rice is now down 25%, and the Conservative looks like they're going to beat Starmer in a safe Labour seat again. Labour are really starting to fall to bits. I think we're going to see maybe the Reform Party coming in as maybe the second option instead of the Labour Party. We're going to see the Reform Party actually coming in, so it'll be the Conservatives versus the Reform Party in the future. Scottish National Party's elect success may force Boris Johnson into new referendum on independence, but it wouldn't be a good thing if the SNP lost it. So Holyrood voting intention, so they just cut it off at the Greens, see that? They don't actually tell you the other parties that are in other positions. The SNP sitting at 53%. I don't think they're going to get 53%. If they do, they're going to win every constituency, likely. Well, maybe with the exception of a couple. And they're going to get nobody on the list. So they're down 9% on the list. So Alba's up 3%. The Greens are sitting at 12% for some obscure reason. Labour's up, Labour are actually down. They were sitting, I think, at 19% before, and I think they're actually sitting at 16%. But you can see how skewed this is actually coming. So they don't put the other parties on the actual on the polls either. So they actually deliberately skew it. So there we go for the general election. The Reform Party sitting at 2%, the Greens at 5%. George Laird securing the Holyrood hostage Parliament, Scottish Parliament election 2021. The latest Modi poll puts the SNP on course for a Holyrood majority. Pro-UK party leaders are looking increasingly likely to be list MPs. Wow. And probably the SNP won't get any list MPs, so you're only going to be voting for the Alba Party if you want more additional Scottish independents elected MSPs. They're probably not going to get any, the SNP will probably not get any list or very little list MPs. So even if you vote for the second vote for the list, you'd have been better actually switching it to, if you were interested in independence, the Alba Party, Pointless, or the Scottish Libertarian Party. If you're interested in doing that, and I think a lot of people have actually switched now to the UK Reform Party for the Unionists for the list as well. Labour Party, Labour leading in London mayoral election, so we're going to get more Sadiq Khan, absolutely shambolic. Starmer inherited a Labour Party more than 20 points behind. Starmer inherited a Labour Party more than 20 points behind. Today, it's behind by more than 6%. So again, you can see other parties are left off the and it's only the four, so they just try and make sure they restrict it. Everything is restricted so that you don't get any other political parties actually coming on board or being recognised as increasing. So that's another way that they try and restrict the debate. A new poll, SNP, Alex Salmon, Alba Party, no seats, career finished. I think he will get elected. So my thoughts is he'll get elected. I believe that these polls are skewed and they won't be actually correct. London mayoral election. So if I was down in London, I would be voting for David Curtin. That's who I'd be voting for. This guy seems quite a nice guy, but I would say David Curtin looks far more polished, finished article as a politician. Ruth Davison, mission critical for union. Yeah, I mean, it looks like the SNP could get another shot at independence. Whether or not they're going to get a majority for independence, time will only tell. How will SNP fare in the Scottish May elections? There you go. Again, it's just singled as other. So if even you can see that this is from the 8th and 9th, so we've already seen that the UK Reform Party is sitting between 2 and 4%. So why is that not on the list there? Again, just restricting it. Again, restricting it. So no showing for the UK Reform Party. Restricting, so you can now start to see how they actually restrict the information and how they restrict the hustings, and so they prevent other people. They restrict the TV, so other people then other ideas aren't able to ferment and actually come to power. So we have to remember that if they've done that, you must be able to do it back to them. That's going to be the issue as well. So yeah, it's a lot of that. So, and let's see the third way they're doing it. 5 electoral fraud allegations at Peterborough by-election. So that's enough. They're now investigating 5 election fraud allegations relating to the recent by-elections. This is the 14th of June 2019. This is where Nigel could have got his first MP, and we know that they're cheating through postal ballots, which Tony Blair brought in. Tony Blair brought in a lot more access to postal ballots, so that's been easily fraudulently done. And the number of investigations has risen from 2 earlier in the week, and includes one message shared on social media alleging someone bragged that he and 2 others had burned 1,000 votes for the Brexit Party. Now, the Brexit Party were very close to actually winning this, so you can see how the perversion of how they're actually perverting the actual ballot as well. People who have not got ID are able to vote, like harvesting of postal votes. People are instructing people within a group to how to vote in a specific way. So a lot of things that are completely anti-democratic being allowed to being put through by the Conservative Party as well. They have not ensured the clean system of democracy, and it's been tainted now. The latest The last Thursday by-election saw Labour's Lisa Forbes win the seat by 683 votes ahead of the Brexit Party's Mike Green. However, the Conservative Deputy Leader at Peterborough Council, Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald, has alleged there was harvesting of postal votes. That should be made illegal, while the Tories have highlighted the involvement in the campaign Labour activist Tariq Mahmood, who was jailed in 2008 for postal vote interference. So Labour by-election, so we can see how they're actually cheating now, because obviously nobody's going to want to vote for the Labour Party anymore, so they're going to have to cheat. Labour's by-election victory is marred by claims that a convicted vote rigger was at the centre of the campaign after he was pictured with Corbyn, a new MP, at the centre of anti-Semitism row. Now, don't forget, there was somebody standing from a Muslim background who had been writing anti-Semitic remarks on our blog as well, on our Facebook. Tariq Mahmood received 15-month prison sentence in 2008 for voter fraud. Yeah, he's now back with the Labour Party allegedly corrupting the postal votes in Peterborough, where they only just won to keep out the person from the Brexit Party. And harvesting votes as well. The failure of the Conservative Party to bring in proper legislation, bring in voter ID, cancel, unless it's under extreme circumstances, postal votes, is just shows that they do not care about voter integrity. The Labour branded the allegations false and baseless yesterday. Well, he's already been convicted. He said he was not involved in any way. But a person who's convicted of corrupting the Democratic ballot is now at the count with Jeremy Corbyn. Labour narrow victory in Peterborough by-election was marred last night by the claims that a convicted vote rigger was at the centre of their campaign. Jeremy Corbyn, I think this is the person who's corrupting our democracy here. Jeremy Corbyn faced claims that an ex-Labour member claimed jail for postal vote scam has provided vital help in fighting off Nigel Farage's Brexit Party by just 683. Now, he should have nothing to do with the elections. He should have been kicked out of the party and the Labour Party, and had nothing to do with the corruption of the democratic system. But yet the Labour Party seem to have elected a criminal who's been sentenced and convicted of perverting democracy, run their actual their campaign in Peterborough, and he was at the head of their campaign. Jeremy Corbyn faced jail. What you guys saying? Does anyone else automatically think or oppose siren that they are aware in a hurry to get somewhere, tweeting something someone else doesn't like? It's going like F now. Corrupt taught. Yeah, it's corrupt to the core. Yeah, it is corrupt to the core. That's the true story. Yeah. So we're now having our democracy destroyed in front of our eyes, and being facilitated by a political class. Ex-local Labour branch secretary Tariq Mahmood received a 15 months prison sentence in 2008 for his part in a scheme to fabricate votes for the Peterborough council election. But local Tories claim Mahmood picture sporting a red rosette at the by-election count was front and centre of Labour's bid to mobilise the Muslim vote. He was also photographed with Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn last month, as well as pictured with eventual by-election winner Lisa Forbes. So we can see that Labour's corrupt to the core. It's probably similar in Scotland as well. Labour branded the alleged false and baseless yesterday, saying that he was not involved in the running of the Labour's campaign. He shouldn't have been anywhere near Labour Party. He should have been kicked out of the Labour Party. A convicted ballot rigger, a convicted perverter of democracy, shouldn't have been anywhere near the Labour Party. He should have been kicked out of the party. The fact that they've still got that just shows you how deeply untrustworthy the Labour Party is. Party sources also claim it was factually incorrect to claim Labour had won because of the Muslim vote, pointing out that Peterborough was 85% white. But the row erupted after Labour MPs privately told the Mail on Sunday they were hoping the sizable Muslim vote would come to the party's rescue last week. We need to start getting IDs so that people voter IDs and ban harvesting of votes and people trying to pervert the course. That guy should not have been anywhere near that cow. Wayne Fitzgerald, deputy leader of the Conservative Front, Peterborough Council, said Tariq Mahmood is a villain, a criminal, and he was the front and centre of Labour's campaign within the Muslim community. We received repeated fraud. Well, it was Tony Blair that brought in the postal fraud, but you're in power now, so you could do something about it. You just choose not to do it. With largely urban central parts of the city where Labour vote is strongest. Former Peterborough Jackson said that Tariq Mahmood shouldn't be involved in politics at all. Of course he shouldn't. He should be nowhere near account. Shouldn't be even in the Labour Party, but it just shows you how duplicitous and one rule for one for another the Labour Party actually are. That's why you should never vote Labour. He has recorded for voter fraud, and the fact that he is so close to the Labour campaign speaks volumes about the rottenness of the current Labour Party.
Of a month, and their professionalism and commitment is a real credit to Peterborough. Thanks must also go to my opponents. Putting yourself forward to stand for election is never easy. To my agent and campaign team and our amazing activists.
The ones that cheat through postal ballot fraud. You should be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed to have been elected like that.
Over many months. Thank you. Finally, to the people of Peterborough, there have been many in recent months who claim democracy in this country is broken, but you have proven them wrong. A democracy only works when people make their voices heard on the issues that matter to them and their families. I thought this campaign on safer streets, more investment for us,
and ballot harvesting,
schools,
ballot fraud,
and a better deal for Peterborough. The fact that you have turned up in such large numbers
allegedly,
is a testament to the fact that many here are desperate to see Peterborough change for the better.
by corrupting the political and democratic process.
Despite differing opinions across our city, the fact that the Brexit Party have been rejected here in Peterborough
because of voter harvesting, ballot fraud, allegedly, and other sorts of ways that the criminal Labour Party have actually perverted the course of justice. Carry on. Or course of democracy. By the Islamo-fascists who don't care about democracy.
This is a result for every community in Peterborough. Tonight's victory is significant because it has shown that the politics of hope can win.
The politics of cheating, the GIMP's Islamo-Marxist, globalist Islamo-Marxist party wins by cheating. Yeah, we know what the Labour Party are all about. So that's just one. Let's see. Labour's election silence. Oh, here we go. Labour silence on. So this is in the Telegraph. Oh. Telegraph, the Peterborough by-election in June, which Labour narrowly won by 683 votes, was overshadowed by claims of voter fraud. This is the Telegraph. A police investigation into 5 complaints dismissed them all. Again, if the council's controlling the police, then it would be difficult for the police to investigate themselves. Councillor guilty of postal vote fraud, that would shame. Councillor guilty of postal vote fraud that would shame a banana republic. 17th of September 2011. In the Independent, a judge has delivered a devastating indictment of championed by the ministers as he found 6 Labour councillors guilty of election fraud. He said checks against corruption were hopelessly insecure and accused the government of being in denial about the risks to democracy. A judge has delivered a devastating indictment of postal vote system championed by ministers as he found 6 Labour councillors just cheats. Who would vote for the Labour Party anyway? He said checks against the corruption was hopelessly insecure. But this is the Tories that have failed to actually tighten up this system and allowed the democracy to be corrupted. They accused the government of being in denial about the risks to democracy. Richard Morey QC, sitting as an election commissioner in Birmingham, found overwhelming evidence of fraud in last year's city council elections. That would be a disgrace of Banana Republic. The elections where several candidates bucked the trend to win were dogged by claims of intimidation, bribery, vote buying, impersonation, and even the creation of a vote rigging factory. Judge's comments yesterday are police before the expected announcement by Tony Blair of a 5 May general election where millions of votes will be cast by post were highly embarrassing to Labour. So it was, as I said, it was Tony Blair that brought this in to corrupt it, because obviously nobody was voting for the Labour Party, to corrupt the system. And unless the Conservatives start to tighten things up, then we're going to continue to see this. The court ruled against 3 Labour MPs in Bronsley Green Ward, Shafiq Ahmed, Shab Jahan and Azza Khan. The 3 in Aston Ward were Mohammed I don't know what all these guys have got in common. Maybe Islamofascism. Mohammed Islam, Mohammed Afzal and Mohammed Kazi. The 10th of June poll was declared void and will be rerun next month. Well, that's great then, just coming in and corrupting the process, is it? There's obviously no democracy in Islam. Mr. Morey said Broadsley Green and Ashton were not isolated incidents, but parts of Birmingham-wide campaign by the Labour Party to try by bogus postal votes to counter the adverse effect of the Iraq war on its electoral fortunes. The judge said government claims that the guards against vote rigging were in place revealed a state not simply of complacency but denial. I would say it was probably active factor there of involvement, but I guess everyone's their own. He said there is no system to deal with realistically with fraud, and there never has been. Until there are, fraud will continue unabated. So again, this is how they corrupt the political system, the Lib Lab Con Party. So this is another way of them corrupting the political system. So they've got multiple ways of actually preventing. So that probably the Brexit Party guy should have won, and because the Labour Party are so corrupt, that they've actually corrupted the political system and been allowed to by the Conservatives. So they both work hand in glove to actually corrupt the whole system. That's Galladay. Aye, rhinos. Call the Tories what they are, rhinos. Well, I would say they're corporatist globalists. You know, the new democracy is dictatorship. Well, you don't forget that we're trying to get us in the European Union, where 20 unelected commissioners were dictating our legislation, and that wee nippy is a globalist shell. Same with Salmon, same with all of the 5 parties. So you've got a choice of 5 parties that are all gimps, globalist Islamo-Marxist parties. I think many emojis and Beta, apart from the sick face. Love, isn't he, Beta? You guys are too funny. Want to recruit as many as non-white, exactly. That's it. Of course, it's okay if you discriminate against white people. That's the new discrimination. If you're discriminating, destroying democracy, doing all this sort of stuff, then that's what it's going to be. Mr. Morris said the rules allowing, and so they can corrupt the polls to make people look like, I can't be bothered going out because it's not going to make a difference voting for a smaller party, which it does. And we can actually then corrupt it in a way by vote harvesting, using the postal votes for election fraud, and doing all these sort of things to get our candidates in power. That's what they're doing. Oh my goodness. Election fraud committed by immigrants, claims X. Oh my goodness. Election fraud committed by immigrants, claims ex-Tory General. Former Attorney General Dominic Greaves has claimed election fraud is on the rise and blames immigrants in countries in which there is no tradition of electoral corruption and fraud. Well, the Tories can do something about it and start to tighten it up and stop the corruption. They have the power to do it. They've just absolutely chosen not to do it. They could bring in a Scotland bill to have a separation of the different aspects of our political parties, political systems, and not have them all under the power of wee nippy. Tory MP warned of the risk posed by the Conservatives by fraud. The party is, the more risk of corruption will affect us, and if we lay down the general rules now, we will be thanked, particularly by those people who have come from countries where I'm afraid there is an endemic tradition of corruption, he said. Exactly. So why are the Tories not doing anything about it? Oh, come on. Oh, have you guys got anything to say to me? This is short and sweet. I think it's been about an hour, just over an hour. I love the Holy Order. Yes, the Holy Order. The only Poles are the Polish. Yeah, all like the Poles. Yes, the love that only one comes from one alpha man. Well, guys, I do my best to keep you guys updated, to show you what in our political establishment. Let's not kid on that it's all going great. It's good that Mrs. Morell doesn't have wains. Imagine that being your mum. Yeah, well, I don't think she can have wains because she may be a lesbian. That might be the reason she doesn't have wains, which would explain her misandrous, men-hating, anti-white men-hating ways that she's got in by her policies that she brought in through our minions. Yeah, wee nippy takes votes wherever she can. She thinks she is all our ma. That's the problem, aye. Hi, Jimmy, how you doing, buddy? You just missed it. Have a wee look back, guys. Have a wee look back on what I've said. Obviously I'm being suppressed, so if you guys can share, I don't know if you want to share me on your social media, but if you share me on your social media, I'd be much appreciated. I'd never ask you to share me, but we're definitely being suppressed now, and the greater the word goes out, the better for us. on Facebook. I'm banned on Facebook, obviously, again, trying to restrict access to the public. So we're going to obviously set up our own things very soon. We're in the process of doing that. As I said, I'm going to get a shield, so thanks very much for the advice. I'm going to get a shield for this. I'll improve the audio as well. So I'm going, and I'll stop me being able to hear me breathing on the phone. So I'll get that sorted out as well. And we'll get the green screen, blue screen behind us as well, and we'll really improve it. Guy, Miriam, thanks very much. I never saw you there. Thank you. It's quite interesting, isn't it? But I think you should all be starting to complain, write to your MPs, MSPs, and start to complain about the daughter of Satan. I missed you guys having a chat there because I was too involved in actually bringing the information. The thing you need to do is start being proactive and start to write to your MPs and start complaining about things, and then start to publish your complaints if they don't do anything. So it just builds up and builds up a critical mass. Start complaining. If they're not doing anything, complain. Show it out to the public as well. Write letters to them. We want voter reform. We want this. We want that. And that's what has to happen. It has to happen. So they're deliberately preventing Scottish Libertarian Party and other smaller parties from attending hustings and only restricting it to the five main parties. Oh, come on. Vote for the Scottish Reform, the UK Reform Party, Scottish UK Reform Party, and the Scottish Libertarian Party. Guys, if you're a nationalist, Scottish Libertarian Party, if you're a unionist, the UK Reform Party in Scotland, on the list and the constituency, vote for them wherever you can, in either or. Reject the five main parties. My baby Gorillas, I love you. I hope the sound's coming in crisp and clear now that I've spent a fortune on this. As soon as I can get the shield in, that should be the sound completed. And then I'll start the programme. We'll get wee jingles coming in and things like that as well. Nippy has went from the far into hell that Satan has asked her where she's going. She's just corrupted. They've all just corrupted the process. All just corrupted the process. Absolutely useless. Look at where's Sawa. Let's not kid on that Sawa angered. There he is there. It is. So Sarwar is obviously, they're quite happy to corrupt everything. Quite happy, it's all quite happy to corrupt. This is the Herald. So we're not talking about, I'm not taking from any extreme sources, these are all in the papers. 28th of September, Anis Sarwar and the multi-million pound tax fraud suspect by Tom Gordon. So this is Mr. Sarwar cozying up to the tax frauder here. If they're not corrupting if it's not getting corrupted by the political means, it's corrupting the tax system. Anis Sarwar is facing fresh questions over his judgment after a video emerged of him laughing and joking with a suspect in a multi-million pound VAT fraud investigation. Oh, he keeps good company, Mr. Sarwar. The Scottish Labour leadership candidate was recently filmed dining with Mohammed Ahmed Mirza, who obviously, I don't know if he's going to jail, was found with £900,000 stuffed into carrier bags in an HMRC raid. Oh, it sounds like cracking. That's exactly the type of person I would want a future potential candidate for the Scottish First Minister hanging about with. That's why the Scottish Labour Party have reduced from, apart from him being an anti-white racist and not actually want to address the raping of children by Muslim asylum seekers children were in a care home, and just brushing it off saying I'm far right. And but it also associates with people who are tax criminals, as well as our So this is the guy that's meant to be all for the people and all for the workers, who has in the Herald again. So when's this? So this is again the 23rd of September 2017. Anis Sarwar admits previous shareholding in tax haven. So he's now trying to alleviate his own tax, not paying his due, but allegedly from this, Anis Sarwar is facing fresh questions about his credibility and judgment after admitting he owns shares in a company in a tax haven. Millionaire Scottish Labour leadership candidate has a stake in a software company based in the Channel Islands. While an MP, all right. So we don't know if they're going to get a clean vote down in the. I think Sarwar's standing against Sturgeon, so we don't know if we're going to get a clean vote in that constituency as well. So we need to improve our democratic process. This is not acceptable, and we need to improve it. And the people who are being voted for are certainly not acceptable either. I love chicken korma. I love chicken korma as well. I went on the Newsnight. I went through. So let's go on the Newsnight. Alex. So it's not about whether you agree with Alex Salmond or not. Or George Galloway. It's the fact that, Tam Laird and Michelle Ballantyne, who is an MSP, were also refused any access to the political debate. So Alex Salmond snubbed. So even Alex Salmond, the former First Minister, is able to get snubbed for these absolute clowns that we've got in political power just now. Absolute buffoons. So this is on the 6th of April 2021. Alistair Grant from the Herald again. Alex Salmond snubbed by SNP despite calls to be included in the leadership debate. Of course he should have been included in the leadership debate. So should Michelle Ballantyne, who's an MSP and the leader of UK Reform Party, and Tam Laird. We should have had all the different groups, but no, they want to restrict it. This is not a democracy we're living in. We're going past post-democracy, and it's going to lead to violence. Because if you're denying people their democratic right and perverting the actual democratic process, what choice have you got? Alex Salmond will not be included in the STV leaders debate next week despite his demands for fair coverage. The broadcaster said that election debate will feature the 5. So again, they're trying to contract the debate. So if they're not trying to contract the debate in the local hustings, they're trying to contract the debate in on the television. So the individual does not, and they try and contract it in the polls if they're not committing voter fraud. So these are all the things that are actually happening in postal VAT fraud as well. So these are all the things that they're doing to corrupt the political system, and not to mention the fact they want us to be governed by 28 unelected commissioners in the EU. Oh, come on. Right, my baby gorillas. Press 1 for Cormac. You guys are too funny. Right, I love a Cormac as well. I love the Indians as well. Right, guys, my baby gorillas, hope you enjoyed that. It's a wee bit serious there. Love you guys.